Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. The Sensex and the Nifty end flat after pairing losses in late trade. Midcaps outperform with the index gaining over 1%. India's manufacturing activity in March hits the highest level in 16 years. The HSBC Purchasing Managers Index is at the highest point since 2008 thanks to strong production, new orders and an expansion in hiring. Crude oil prices spike as tensions rise in the Middle East. Iran accuses Israel of bombing its consulate in Syria, killing at least 11 people, including 2 military commanders. Iran calls the attack on a diplomatic mission as unprecedented and promises a harsh response. Israel is yet to comment on the strike. Israel faces global condemnation after food charity World Central Kitchen says 7 of its employees were killed in Gaza when their convoy was attacked. The deceased include citizens from the US, UK and Australia. The charity decides to pause operations in the region. Over 100 Vistara flights cancelled in the last 48 hours after several pilots call in sick at the 11th hour. Sources say pilots are unhappy with the new contract, which cuts their compensation. Government seeks a detailed response from the airline for the cancellations. We take your apology with a sack full of salt, says the Supreme Court to Baba Ramdev after he tenders an unconditional apology over misleading ads falsely claiming to cure COVID-19. Orders Ramdev to appear in person once again for the next hearing. The court also questions the inaction from the union government and the Uttarakhand state government. The Supreme Court grants bail to Aam Aadmi Party leader Sanjay Singh in the liquor policy case. After 6 months, the ED says that his custody was no longer required after the court observed that nothing had been recovered in the money laundering probe against him. The court also allowed Singh to take part in political activities but cautioned that it should not be seen as a precedent. After dealing March salaries, Byju is laying off about 500 employees. The embattled EdTech company says they are in the final stages of an ongoing business restructuring exercise. As always, let's start with the market action. The Sensex and the Nifty managing to claw back some of the losses in late trade, ending the day flat. Both the indices marginally in the red. The Sensex, though, within striking distance of 74,000. That's the Sensex for you, down about 100 points, flat close. Similar story for the Nifty, 8 points low. The Nifty Bank also closing flat, just about in the red. The Nifty Midcap up by about 1%, so outperforming the index today. Prashant is here with the wrap of the market action. Prashant, what does Tuesday look like?
All told, a good session by the close of it, by 3:30, because, the market started lower and it stayed down for the bulk of the session. The last hour is when the recovery came. The Nifty recovered the 50 points that it was trading down with, and we ended absolutely flat. So that's essentially the Nifty for you. The Nifty Bank was also trading flat for the bulk of the trading session today. Mid-caps and small caps, on the other hand, were the clear outperformers. That was, starting with the opening tick. So between 1 and 1.5% on both those indices. And like yesterday, that's been the real story. Market breadth actually, positive and stayed positive even as the Nifty sulked through the course. Now, large caps where you had a little bit of pullback today. Hero MotoCorp, HCL Tech and Kotak Bank stood out, but nothing large at all. On the upside, you had names like Tata Consumer, Mahindra & Mahindra and Bajaj Auto, which led from the front. Autos, of course, featuring there prominently. In the broader market, as I said, advances more than declines comfortably. The Aditya Birla Group stocks, ABFRL, because of course, the proposed demerger, and AB Capital, they were the big gainers, and both really number one, number two in terms of volume-led gains today. Talking about organized retail, TCNS Brands was another one which was up about 10%, large volumes there as well. There was NCC, CAMS, which had news flow, Oil India, Reddington, Data Patterns, MTAR Technologies. There was something like a Symphony, CMS Info, Varroc Engineering, and Godfrey Phillips ending about 7-8% higher as well. On the downside, you had Indus Tower, which had seen a sharp rally yesterday, 3.5% pullback. Idea, similar pullback after yesterday's rally. And there was a South Indian Bank and a PNB Housing. These are all essentially reversals, short reversals, daily reversals after prior day outperformances. So it's once again watching US markets closely, especially what's happening on the US bond markets, where yields closed at about 4.3% last night. Back to you.
All right, Prashant, many thanks for joining us. That was the market action. Now, India's manufacturing activity continued to expand in March, touching a 16-year high. As per the HSBC India Purchasing Managers Index, the sector activity came in at 59.1 for the month. This comes on the back of the sharpest rise in output and new orders since October of 2020. Remember, reading above 50 indicates expansion. A score below 50 denotes contraction. So good news coming in there on the manufacturing side. The big global story that we continue to track: crude oil prices spike as tensions rise in the Middle East. Iran has accused Israel of airstrikes on its consulate in Syria's Damascus. The strike killed at least 11 people, including senior Iranian military commanders. Syria has condemned the attack, but did not explicitly name Israel. Iran's foreign minister has said the country reserves the right to carry out a reaction and will decide on the response and punishment of the aggressor. Tehran-backed militant group Hezbollah has also reacted, saying that the attack will be met with punishment and revenge. The US has told Iran it had no involvement or advanced knowledge of the Israeli strike in Syria. Israel's military has said it does not comment on foreign media reports. The White House was also cagey when asked to respond.
The Israelis bombed Iran's consulate building in Damascus today, apparently killed an Iranian military commander. Did you know about this in advance? Are you concerned this is an escalation?
So, look, I'm aware of the reports. Our team is looking into it, so I'm not going to get ahead of anything just yet. But obviously, we're aware of the reports, and our team is looking into it. I'm just not going to go beyond that.
And non-profit organization World Central Kitchen has said that at least 7 of its workers, mostly foreign nationals, were killed in an Israeli airstrike in central Gaza. The NGO also added that workers were part of a team that was delivering food to civilians in Gaza and were traveling in a de-conflict zone in 2 armored cars. Israel said it expressed sincere sorrow but stopped short of accepting responsibility.
We have been reviewing the incident in the highest levels to understand the circumstances of what happened and how it happened. We will be opening a probe to examine this serious incident further. This will help us reduce the risk of such an event from occurring again. The incident will be investigated in the fact-finding and assessment mechanism, an independent professional and expert body.
Disturbing development there in Gaza. Now, the big story back home: more than 100 flights from Vistara have been cancelled in the last 48 hours after several pilots called in sick at the last minute. There was chaos at airports after angry passengers confronted officials over the cancellations. Sources say pilots are unhappy with the new contract, which cuts their compensation. The Aviation Ministry has asked the airline for a detailed response. Madiha is standing by with the reasons for the turbulence at Vistara. Madiha, what exactly is going on at Vistara?
Well, this is clearly one of the pre-merger turbulences at Vistara, and the pilots' unrest is something that was actually bound to happen. So here's what has led to the crisis. Several pilots are reporting sick at the last minute, leaving passengers stranded and forcing the airline to cancel flights. Now, why are they behaving like this? The issue centers around their salary contract, which they were told they were to sign by the 15th of March. Now, there's a significant change in their contract after the merger process with Air India started across departments. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that pilots are not willing to sign as the new contract reduces their salaries by almost half. It cuts their guaranteed pay from 70 hours of flying to 40 hours of flying. This is the same issue, if you remember, why Air India pilots were protesting last year when their contracts were revised and their fixed pay was reduced from 70 flying hours to 40. Now, it is learned that this is mostly affecting the first officers who fly Vistara's narrow-body fleet A320. Now, pilots who I spoke to said that this change will nearly half their salaries and cause a reduction of 90,000 rupees to 1 lakh rupees to 1,10,000 rupees in the salaries of first officers every month. Another pilot said that they may not get to fly more than 40 hours if the airline doesn't roster them, or if they are on leave or not keeping well, then they lose their salaries. While we don't know yet how many pilots have signed the contract, but an email that Vistara sent to pilots stated that pilots who don't sign the revised contract will not be allocated a slot on the upgrade sequence list. They will not receive the one-time payout, and it will be considered that they do not wish to join the Air India once the merger is approved, and consequently, they will not be included in the transition to Air India. The message is very clear. Pilots who don't sign will have to say goodbye. So how will Vistara resolve this issue? Will it listen to pilots, or will pilots come to terms with the new contract? We will keep watching how this situation unfolds.
Well, Madhya, many thanks for joining us. Bearing the brunt of all of this, of course, passengers who are left stranded. Patanjali's co-founder Baba Ramdev appeared in person in the Supreme Court today. He tendered an unconditional apology over misleading ads that had falsely claimed to cure COVID-19. The Supreme Court, not impressed. Judges observed, and I quote, "We have taken your apology with a sack full of salt." Ramdev was ordered to appear in person once again for the next hearing. The government and the Uttarakhand state government were also pulled up by the court for inaction over the misleading ads. Ashmit standing by now to take us through what transpired in court. The Supreme Court not impressed with the apology, asking Baba Ramdev to be present at the next hearing in a week's time. Ashmit, take us through what transpired.
Well, to put it mildly, a rough day in court for Baba Ramdev appearing in person. The hearing was due to begin at 10:30. He clocked in at around 10 a.m. He was there present in the court, but the court refusing to address him directly, instead speaking to him via his counsels. And the Supreme Court had some tough words to share. The Supreme Court said that this apology that it was in fact filed late last evening, the courtesy was not extended to have filed it earlier, that this half-a-page apology is something that the Apex Court is not making peace with. It's not content. It's not accepting this apology. Went on to say that this apology, it is taking with a sack full of salt. Further, the Supreme Court noted that as far as Baba Ramdev is concerned, he was very well aware of the Supreme Court directions to stop advertisements for his products, despite that he had gone ahead and done a press conference. So he knew that he was aware of the Supreme Court orders, he was aware of the consequences, yet he was defiant, he was belligerent, that people like Baba Ramdev, who espouse a higher public cause, are held to a different benchmark altogether, cannot be held at par with the common man, and that he needs to be held accountable, and that there will be consequences, and that the Supreme Court is keen on taking these contempt proceedings to their logical conclusion. So with that, the Supreme Court has directed him to appear once again next week when the Supreme Court resumes hearing in this case. Baba Ramdev will have to then explain his position, his action, with respect to contempt of court proceedings. But not just that, the Supreme Court also had some tough words and questions for the central government. The Supreme Court asking why the central government has not been doing its bit, questioning why the centre is keen on passing on the buck of execution, of taking action to the state government. In fact, the Supreme Court said that the central government's own committee had flagged that the COVID cure that was espoused by Patanjali did not have any evidence to support it. It was at best supplementary to conventional COVID treatment, yet no action taken. Also noting that the state licensing authorities are not doing their job. Uttarakhand government is recently issuing a warning, the Supreme Court holding that there is no provision for issuance of a warning. So tough questions being asked of all three stakeholders here, the state, the centre, as well as Baba Ramdev next week.
Ashmit, many thanks for joining us. Troubled EdTech startup Byju has begun to lay off employees via phone calls. Sources tell CNBC-TV18 that 500 jobs will be cut in this current round of job cuts. The layoffs will primarily impact the sales team. Remember, the restructuring plans were announced by Byju in October of last year. The EdTech company has terminated the employment of over 10,000 employees in the last 2 years. Ritu standing by now with more details. Ritu, this is the latest in the round of job cuts that have been underway for almost 2 years now at Byju.
That's right, and Shireen, it may not be the end of it is the concern, because Byju is now letting go of nearly 500 people in yet another round of layoffs, which is the second such round after October last year, and this is on the back of a second month of salary delays as well for its employees. Now, we understand the layoffs are part of the business restructuring, which was announced in October, soon after the new CEO, Arjun Mohan, took reins of the company, and these were targeted at simplifying the cost structures, improving the cash flow management, reducing debt, and so on. And we've been given to understand that Byju, at the time of announcing this restructuring, had estimated an impact of a maximum of 4,500 jobs because of this exercise. And since then, it has already cut about 2,000 jobs in October and 500 now, which would imply that another 1,000 to 1,500 jobs could still get affected in the coming months in a worst-case scenario for the company, although sources in Byju told us that they expect the current round to be the last round of cuts for now. Remember, they've already laid off more than 10,000 employees since 2022 because of the financial and legal troubles that the company finds itself in. Now, in a statement to us, they did confirm the layoffs without putting any number of the number of employees affected, and they blamed it on the stalled rights issue because of the ongoing litigation with foreign investors. They said that they are in the final stages of this restructuring and going through an extraordinary situation because of the ongoing litigation with the investors, where they said the entire employee and their ecosystem is going going through tremendous stress. However, they said they asked for understanding, and I quote them, understanding of the individual and collective stress on the system, which might be prompting some unforeseen situations for departing employees, end of quote.
Ritu, many thanks for joining us. So, job cuts and salaries also being delayed there. That is the latest as far as Byju is concerned. Shares of Tata Technologies jumping nearly 5% in trade this after the company announced a joint venture with BMW Group to develop software for the auto giant. Reema here with more. Reema, take us through the contours of this deal.
Thanks so much for that. So as you rightly pointed out, Tata Tech has entered into a joint venture partnership with BMW. Now, the focus of this particular partnership will be, one, to come up with automotive software for their premium vehicles, but two, they also are going to help with the digital transformation of their entire IT business. So that's important. Thirdly, note that the company, this will be a joint venture, a 50-50 kind of a joint venture. While the value of the deal, this partnership is not known, how much it will contribute, but you can gauge its importance by the number of employees Tata Tech plans to staff. So what the company has said, initially, Tata Tech will staff about 100 of its employees on this particular joint venture, but that number will soon go up to 4 digits. That's 1,000 employees plus. So that gives you an indication that the scale up, the ramp up of this deal could be fairly significant. Also, why the street is very excited is that for Tata Tech, one of the big risks or concerns in the market was its dependence on the Tata Group, particularly Tata Motors and JLR. I think it contributes more than about 30% to its overall revenues. Now that when you onboard another auto OEM and a large one like BMW, and you will be doing software for them, you will be coming up with the entire digital transformation. While the value of the deal is not known, the hope is that it will help in bringing down the client concentration risk, and that's also what the street is excited about. Back to you.
Reema, many thanks. Now shifting focus to the auto industry, domestic car sales reaching an all-time high of over 4.2 million units in FY24. March is the 15th consecutive month where passenger vehicle sales have topped previous monthly records. Robust growth was led by strong growth in SUVs, MPVs and CNG vehicles. However, the industry expects growth to moderate to 3% in FY25. Take a look.
All of us felt that probably, fiscal 24-25, the growth could moderate to about low single digits. So we all had a consensus about 2.5-3%. But that said, I don't think we should be too much worried about it, because a growth on highest ever numbers is not bad at all.
We are planning for it to be next year or this year to be better than the previous year. But having said that, one thing which I want to point out in exports is if you look at the value growth, there is a value growth. There is no value decline, because the parts of the business which are growing, which is Latin America, have a very rich mix of higher value products. When it comes to the industry, of course, always distribution plays a key role, but I think most of the major players are pretty well distributed.
We saw it exceeding the 4 million mark for the first time. We ended up at around 42.3 lakhs. Last year it was 38.9 lakhs, so that's a good growth, almost like 8.5-9%. Maruti Suzuki actually grew faster, so we could come to a figure of around 17.94 lakhs, so which was pretty good, I would say. Yes, growth has been faster, so we've been able to add market share as well.
Well, going in strong to the new fiscal, that's the auto industry. Shares of Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail gained over 10% in early trade. This after the company said it will evaluate the potential demerger of Madura Fashion and Lifestyle business into 2 separate listed entities. Manglam standing by with more. Manglam, what's cooking at AB Fashion?
Well, ABFRL has announced that they will evaluate a vertical demerger of their businesses into 2 separate listed entities. As you can see, one would be the Madura Fashion and Lifestyle business. The other one would be the rest of the business. The question we are asking here is if this exercise can actually unlock value. So let's look at this whole exercise and the numbers itself. Now, as per the company's statement to the exchanges, what will each of these businesses hold? Let's start with Madura Fashion and Lifestyle business. It'll hold brands like Louis Philippe, Van Heusen, their underwear business, which is growing extremely fast as well, Alan Solly, Peter England, then a couple of these new businesses like American Eagle, the young businesses Forever 21, and the sports business, which is Reebok as well. This demerges and lists separately. The remaining ABFRL business will hold Pantaloons, their vast growing ethnic wear portfolio, the luxury brands that they have, the bridge to luxury brands as well, and a bunch of digital brands known as Tomorrow. So it appears with this that we can classify these businesses in two parts. One is the value generator, the other one is the growth generator. Why do I call them so? Let's start with Madura lifestyle and fashion brands. We have a 5% revenue growth for this business. Large part of the revenue comes in 6350 odd crores in the first 9 months of this year, with almost 1000 crores of EBITDA at a margin of 15.5%. Whereas the other business, the fast growing business, grew at around 21% in the first 9 months of this year, with a revenue of around 4500 crores. Of course, because it's in an investment phase, the margins are a lot lower at around 8% itself. If the current growth rate continues with additional kickers coming in from improved consumer sentiment and business focus as well for the next 2 years, for Madura Garments, which has grown at around 5% for the first 9 months of this year, we can assume a revenue compounding of 10% and an EBITDA compounding of over 12% for the next 2 years. And for AB Fashion and Retail, it's a growth driver and we will see some operating leverage as well, which is why I have assumed 22% revenue growth and 25% EBITDA compounding as well. We end up with roughly 11,000 crore revenue and 1,800 crore EBITDA for the Madura Fashion and Lifestyle business for FY26. Whereas for AB Fashion and Retail, the numbers are close to 10,000 crore on the top line with 800 crore on the EBITDA itself. So big question then is how to value these two entities. I'm looking at comparable numbers for companies like Trent. It would be then prudent to ascribe a huge discount to Trent, which trades at 45 times FY26 EV to EBITDA, and give it similar multiples to players like Arvind Fashions as well, and also given a higher multiple to the AB Fashion and Retail business, largely because of higher growth prospects. So look at 20x EV to EBITDA for AB Fashion and Retail and 15x for Madura Fashion and Lifestyle itself. You end up with an enterprise value of 15,700 crores for AB Fashion and Retail and 26,600 crores for Madura Fashion and Lifestyle, which takes the total enterprise value to 42,000 crore as against the 26,000 crores it is at right now. Before jumping to all the conclusions, what are the factors that we should focus on? The first one, what is the exact cash on books post the GIC fund infusion? What the total debt and payables are of the company? 9,300 crore as of September. How will this be split between the two entities? The third one, what is the expected growth capital infusion in ABFRL and the resultant dilution on that? And finally, the path to profitability and growth for both these divisions, how they play out, will be important to see the value that will emerge from this entire exercise.
All right, Mangalam, many thanks. Up next, the Supreme Court grants bail to Aam Aadmi Party leader Sanjay Singh in the liquor policy case after 6 months. That and more when we return. The Supreme Court has granted bail to Aam Aadmi Party leader and Rajya Sabha MP Sanjay Singh in the liquor policy case. After 6 months, the court observed that the Enforcement Directorate has not submitted any evidence of a bribe taken by Singh or given evidence pointing out the money trail. The court has also allowed Singh to participate in political activities while he is out on bail. Ashmit, who's been tracking that case as well, joins us now. Ashmit, take us through the observations being made by the court while granting bail to AAP leader Sanjay Singh.
Well, the Supreme Court had some very pointed observations with respect to the lack of evidence, the lack of any trace of this money trail that is being spoken of by the Enforcement Directorate. In fact, at the very beginning, we heard Abhishek Manu Singhvi, who was appearing for Sanjay Singh in this case. He argued that as far as the money trail is concerned, the entire allegation is that of a receipt of bribe of 2 crore rupees. Yet he pointed out that there is no evidence that the ED has demonstrated either before the trial court or here before the top court. There is absolutely no mention in either the charge sheet or the remand order. Further, he went on to argue, to substantiate his point even further, is that if there was evidence, why did the ED not initiate proceedings for attachment of property or attachment of assets? Further, in fact, pointed out that this has been a constant SOP followed by the ED, which is that this entire arrest was based on the statement, on the 10th statement of an approver, Dinesh Arora, that he issued 9 other statements where there was no implicating Sanjay Singh. Now, what's important is that the Apex Court took these observations, took these comments into account and asked these tough questions of the Enforcement Directorate as to why there has been no attachment of property if there was evidence, why no evidence has been shown or demonstrated before the court. Also asking that if there were 9 statements of Dinesh Arora where he had not implicated the accused in question, then why the reliance on only one out of the 10 statements by the Enforcement Directorate? When confronted with these questions, the counsel for the ED, ASG Raju, he appeared before the top court. He said that given the peculiar circumstances in this particular case, there was a concession that ED is ready to make, is willing to allow bail here. And it is on the back of that after 180 days in custody, the Apex Court granting bail, allowing him to participate in political activities and adding only a single caveat that this shall not serve as a precedent in other matters.
Ashmit, many thanks for joining us. So it begs the question on what next as far as Arvind Kejriwal and Manish Sisodia are concerned. Infrastructure and education are the two big areas that the central government has been pushing in the Jammu region ahead of elections. A new IIT, IIM and AIMS have been built in the city, and Prime Minister Modi on his recent visit to Jammu announced infrastructure projects worth 32,000 crore rupees. However, not much has changed in the old areas and markets of Jammu. Local businesses say their reach to the government is minimum in the absence of a state government. Shivani Bazaz finds out more.
Well, with the promise of transforming the landscape of Jammu into a hub of education and development, the Government of India has put the spotlight on new educational institutions, hospitals and road and rail lines. With the promise of establishing prestigious institutions like IIT and IIM being fulfilled, the Government of India has now announced the extensive infrastructure push worth 32,000 crores recently. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also laid the foundation stone for a new terminal of the Jammu airport. Clearly, ahead of the election, the focus of a Viksit Jammu is education and connectivity.
और हमने संकल्प लिया है विकसित जम्मू कश्मीर का। मुझे आप पर विश्वास है, हम विकसित जम्मू कश्मीर बना करके ही रहेंगे। आज ही यहां 32,000 करोड़ रुपए के प्रोजेक्ट, उसका शिलान्यास और कुछ का लोकार्पण किया गया।
With infrastructure as the key focus in Jammu for the upcoming Lok Sabha elections, local businesses say that even after big boost to infra projects, Jammu's local markets remain neglected.
ब्यूटिफिकेशन तो इन्होंने ऑलमोस्ट हो चुकी है, लेकिन अभी भी इसमें बड़े सारे काम बाकी रह गए। जैसे हमारी अंडरग्राउंड वायरिंग थी, वो अभी बचा हुआ है। पानी का कुछ इश्यूज हैं, कुछ पार्किंग के। सबसे जो हमारा मेन इशू है वो है पार्किंग और ट्रैफिक का। एक्चुअली हमारे यहाँ पे आसपास कोई पार्किंग स्लॉट नहीं है, और ये जो हमारी है जो मार्केट है, ये इन्होंने बनाई थी वन वे के लिए, लेकिन अभी ये ऐसा है कि ये बोथ वे चलती है, तो इसमें पूरा दिन जैमिंग रहती है। नई सरकार आएगी तो एक तो जो पॉपुलर गवर्नमेंट होती है उसकी एक्सेसिबिलिटी आम लोगों के लिए ज़्यादा होती है। जो ब्यूरोक्रेसी होती है, आम लोग उनके पास पहुंचने में भी उनको दिक्कत होती है, परेशानी होती है।
Even though work has been done under the Jammu Smart City project, small businesses say that the absence of a local representation and a state government has made things difficult for businesses. Many issues including parking, congested roads and lack of civil facilities continue to be important issues for local businesses in Jammu's famous Raghunath Bazaar, Gandhinagar and Apsara Road markets.
जब हमारी ये गवर्नमेंट बनेगी तो हम जो सुनवाई जो होती है, क्योंकि ये एलजी सरकार है, एलजी सरकार में किसी की सुनवाई नहीं है, क्योंकि ब्यूरोक्रेट बैठे हुए हैं, बाहर से लोग आए हुए हैं, उनको ना पता है गांधीनगर का, ना उनको जम्मू का पता है, ना किसी गली का पता है। जम्मू के लोकल लोग लगेंगे, वही एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में बैठेंगे, उनको पता भी है भाई हमने कैसे एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन को चलाना।
इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट में येस, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट हो रहा है, जैसे रिंग रोड्स बन रही हैं, हाईवेज बन रहे हैं। अगर आप देखें तो यहाँ पे स्मार्ट सिटीज़ जब हमारे सैंक्शनड हुए ऑल ओवर द नेशन, जम्मू की 2 स्मार्ट सिटीज़, उनमें नाम है एक जम्मू एंड एक कश्मीर। कहीं की भी इकॉनमी आप देखोगे जहाँ पे लोगों का आना जाना ज़्यादा रहेगा, वहीं की इकॉनमी राइज़ करती है, चाहे वो उसके साथ लोकल बिजनेसेस हों, चाहे हमारी बड़ी इंडस्ट्रीज़ हों। लेकिन ये चीज़ों की सुनवाई नहीं हो पा रही। ये हमारी लोकल लीडरशिप जो नहीं है, मे बी उसका अफेक्ट रहेगा सबसे ज़्यादा।
Clearly, local issues remain the top priority ahead of elections. In Jammu City with Vijay Lakshman Singh, this is Shivani Bazaz for CNBC-TV18.
And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Business 360. The news will continue. Stay tuned.